Loney was reserved in public. She was happily married and liked the energetic, boisterous women she supervised at work. They were full of energy, always ready to joke. They had an endless supply of obscene stories, and they constantly competed with each other in wit. Loney always found it amusing when they teased her for being afraid to join in on their fun. She explained that she found their stories very fascinating, but although she enjoyed hearing about their antics, she simply would not enjoy it if she herself did what they talked about. She also added that she was incredibly happy with her Jim, and that some of their adventures would not pass the husband test. At this moment, she smiled slyly and, changing her voice to a more sensual one, said, to the great pleasure of her subordinates, "With a man like Jim, a woman wants to get an excellent in this test." The girls responded by asking her a lot of questions at a fast pace. How does he cope with the flapping of rags after class? How many extracurricular activities do you have? What's the fun in homework? Great, does this mean unconventional sex? Loney answered, half lowering her eyelids, giving her gaze a languid look. All women dreamed of finding a man they could love the same way Loney loved Jim. But until they met him, they just wanted to have fun. They weren't looking for husbands. Men were just part of their fun, and they reserved their loyalty and emotions for each other. Until they meet a man who makes them change their ways, why not have a little fun? They repeatedly invited Loney to after-work parties, explaining that she didn't have to pick up a man, but just to dance a little. In her refusal, Loney always said she didn't want to find out how a little dancing could hurt her. She returned the fire to them again, thanked them for the invitation, reminding them that she would dance horizontally at home with Jim. It was an argument the girls could never refute. However, everyone knew that they would like Loney to join them at least once. The girls said they would protect her from unwanted male attention if she just went with them. It sounded reasonable until one of them blurted out, "Can a little flirting really hurt?" Loney smiled as she replied, "I know it's fun, but consider two things, girls. First, flirting with someone else can ruin a marriage. Regardless of the reason, if you start doing the wrong thing on purpose, you should expect it to blow up in your face, and not in a good way. The other reason is simple. I'm so happy with Jim. The very thought of flirting with another man disgusts me. It's not that men are not attractive, but my inner voice says that this is wrong. My instinct is always to worry if something is wrong or goes beyond what is permitted." The girls understood that this time they had failed again, but they knew that they would try again soon. It was a pattern of behavior that everyone, including Loney, was comfortable with. The company decided to put a big emphasis on the show in Las Vegas, and Loney's customer service department was the perfect choice to organize the booth. The girls were delighted with the prospect. They pressured Loney to come with them, but she agreed because her job was to supervise them, and now also the stand. The stand was set up before they arrived. They had to organize and decorate the space to make it look and feel like their best. The first day passed quickly, as if changing the oil while the car was driving. The girls did a great job, and it was clear that the show would be a success for the company. The mood was joyful, and they deserved to have some fun that evening. After dinner and exploring the city, they realized that a hotel bar would be their best option for a party. Although they shared rooms, the company paid for a really nice hotel. The hotel was right next to the convention center where they worked during the day, and the bar was fantastic with a huge dance floor right next door. There was no need to drive, and the room was an elevator right away, which meant at least one extra cocktail every night. The hotel was full of beautiful young salespeople and executives, or as the girls put it, a target rich in resources. They quickly established their routine, with Loney playing the role of hard-nosed mentor and mom, protecting her feral chickens. She discussed her role in the exhibition with Jim before leaving for the trip. He fully supported her, which also made her proud. Loney called him every night and looked forward to these calls all day. Then came a general celebration on the last evening of the exhibition. The salespeople and executives were leaving the next day, so it was like prom or spring break. Towards the end of their stay in Vegas, the girls decided to do something nice for Loney to thank her for taking care of them at work. especially during that week. They also really wanted her to be part of their team for at least one night. They decided that between them they would ensure that Loney's glass never remained empty. Working together, the girls became a real machine in filling her glass, a little more every time she turned her back. They plied her with alcohol, lowered her guard, made her roll around laughing, and eventually forced her to dance with them. Under the influence of alcohol, Loney now took part in things she had always avoided. She really enjoyed dancing with them. For the first time, they could be friends rather than colleagues. The girls knew that Loney did not want to flirt, but they decided that they could do one more nice thing for her. Loney was a beautiful woman, and beautiful people appreciate beauty. The girls were very protective of her, but once her inhibitions relaxed, they arranged for her to dance with several very handsome men, handing over their dance partners to her during the song. The girls noticed that Loney was blushing. She didn't approve of what was happening, but she clearly enjoyed dancing with these handsome men. The problem was that the girls also got very drunk. They acted in groups, transferring care of Loney from one group to another. As they drank more and more, their focus on what might happen later in the evening intensified, and their defenses of Loney began to weaken. Soon the girls noticed that Loney was very drunk. She only liked these handsome men because she knew the girls cared about her. However, Loney didn't make sure the girls really cared about her. After some time, the girls realized that Loney was not with them. Their heads began to turn like prairie dogs looking for danger. Some girls stopped dancing and began to look in one direction, signaling to others to stop and look there too. When everyone fixed their gaze on that place, they gasped in unison. Loney was passed from hand to hand like a piece of wood thrown in the waves. Some of the men were holding Loney in their arms, and some were clearly groping her. Loney sure as hell really liked the attention. Oh no, Loney was too drunk to notice or realize that it was bad. She trusted them, and not only did they let her down, but they got her so drunk that she couldn't defend herself. They then threw her into the wolves' den, having her dance with the boys and leaving her alone with them. When she comes to her senses, Loney will never go to a party with them again. This will ruin their relationship at work. They had to do something. The ears came together and began to exchange accusations. I thought the SEAL 2 team was supposed to be keeping an eye on her at this hour. No, it was the turn of the SEAL 6 team. One of them pointed to Loney on the dance floor. She was bent over a little, pretending to dance with a handsome guy who was pressing into her with such passion that he should be hired by Starbucks. One of the girls shouted in despair, "Loney is dancing in front of 1,000 people, and it's our fault. We can't just stand here and argue. Look at his fingers. They're already reaching for her chest." There was another collective sigh. Another girl added, "Damn girls, while we're at it, Loney, who doesn't want to do anything that would make her husband doubt her, is just one top move and one bottom move away from becoming a human wheelbarrow on the dance floor. We messed this up, and we need to fix it before Loney actually sleeps with anyone." The heavily drunk girls decided to act directly. They all went out onto the dance floor together and pulled Loney away from the handsome man. Deciding not to miss the opportunity, the last of the girls, with a seductive smile, smoothly slid into his arms, just left by Loney. The group was discussing who made up Team SEAL 1 and Team SEAL 3 when they brought Loney back to their table and started giving her water. Each team lost several members as the girls got increasingly drunk and found some cute guy to devote their attention to. The stage of competition has begun. Loney was a mother hen, but none of the other girls had any idea what that job entailed. Not knowing exactly how to care for the mother hen herself, and not knowing which team was currently supposed to be caring for her, Loney was quickly left alone at the table. When several of the girls, who were planning to return to their rooms at the end of the evening, reconvened, no one questioned why Loney was not at the table. Each of them thought that the others had already taken care of their friend and taken her home. Drunk and tired, when they got to their rooms, they just wanted to drink water, brush their teeth, and crash into bed. Loney woke up the next morning, realizing the only thing she could do was run to the toilet. The layout of most hotels is so familiar that she almost automatically made her way to the bathroom and vomited everything she had in her stomach. This partially brought her to her senses. Vomiting is an underrated physical exercise. It's great for cardio and breathing, as well as getting the blood moving and training some specific muscle groups. The same can be said about being shocked by a stun gun. Loney emerged from the bathroom a little more cheerful, but also significantly more unhappy. She looked around. Something was wrong. At first, she was simply confused. How did this happen? She thought. Perhaps this is not her number. Then, among other unpleasant sensations, she realized that she felt pain and satisfaction. There. Loney's eyes opened a little wider. She smiled, feeling like she had sex. Smiling to herself, she returned to the bathroom to clean herself up. Looking around, she realized that these were not her toiletries. Her brain began to wake up. He asked the question, "What? Oh my God, it's really not her number. Wait, her husband is not here. Oh no, oh God." She turned on the shower and jumped in while the water was still cold. She rubbed herself and rubbed, seemingly as hard as her tears. Loney dried herself off with a towel and put on the robe provided. She tried to assess the situation. She's in Las Vegas, and she's sure she had sex. Her husband is not here. She adored Jim. She slowly walked into the dark room. Of course, none of her friends from work were here. She prayed as she approached the bed. She got close enough to realize that there was a man lying in the rumpled sheets. If she didn't sleep on the floor, they slept in the same bed. Feeling dizzy, Loney moved even closer, trying to figure it out. He was still shrouded in darkness and snored, enjoying a deep sleep. Loney cringed, coming to the conclusion that she must have worn him out. She didn't see his face before she vomited on him. After a splash and a few choice curses, a struggle with the sheets followed. And then click, the light turned on. The bright light invading eyes, accustomed to almost complete darkness, was like the blow of a deadly ray. They struggled to find their way around the room, bumping into furniture as if they were on the bridge of the Enterprise during a Romulan attack. They swirled around the room like billiard balls after being hit by a cue. The man seemed to come to his senses faster. He was the first to push Loney aside to get to the bathroom, motivated by the fact that he was covered in her vomit. Loney looked around. She really didn't want to talk to this man. Damn it. How could she do such a thing? Mentally going through all the possible options, she desperately searched for her clothes. She was horrified that her underwear was not with the rest of her clothes. This seemed to make the situation even worse. Loney imagined herself falling all over the Enterprise bridge, her clothes flying in all directions. She cried out quietly at this imaginary vision. Loney clutched the clothes she found to her chest. She was shaking all over. She needed to escape. She prayed that she could put her clothes on faster than she could take them off. It took Loney a while to find her number. It was a real walk of shame. She walked unsteadily, holding the only shoe she could find. She was pretty sure she left with two yesterday. Her hair was wet. Her clothes were wrinkled. It all screamed that she was someone's entertainment last night. Loney hoped to return to the room unnoticed, but one of the girls immediately noticed her. Surprised that Loney had not yet returned, she blurted out, "Wait, if you just came, then you weren't here. So where have you been?" Another girl raised her head. They saw her state of relative undress and even smiled. Her vices now left her to the mercy of fate. Loney had fun. Their joy quickly faded when they saw her reaction to their apparent conclusion. There was an expression of deep brokenness on her face. She stopped in her tracks. Having failed to hide her condition, she now had to face him. "What are the chances that she can hide this from Jim?" she cried bitterly. The girls all rushed to her aid. One brought drinks. Although Loney did not want attention, everyone present clearly understood her condition from her broken mantra. "What have I done? I'm sorry, Jim. Please, Lord, forgive me." The girls sat on the floor, taking turns hugging their wounded friend. They failed her. They wanted her to have fun, but now she was broken and hopeless. They had a temporary solution, what they had always done. Everyone got drunk again, including helpless Loney, who was like putty in their hands. She drank to forget herself because the hot water she found herself in was not cloudy enough to hide the truth. Loney called her husband feeling terrible and told him that her group was taking some documents and orders with them. After the flight and a run to the office, the girls were going to spend the evening together, and she would be the only one who did not drink alcohol. Jim was disappointed that he would not be able to meet her at the airport. Loney felt worse than him. In fact, Loney was too upset. She interrupted his almost certain follow-up question, "Are you okay?" with his own, "I miss you so much. I can't wait to see you. I'm glad the company trusted me with this opportunity, but I don't want to do it again unless you can come with me." Jim told her it was a great idea, and if it became an annual event, he might be able to take some time off and go with her. Loney tried to keep it light, thanked him, and quickly ended the conversation. Then she cried because she lied to him. She said out loud, "It all adds up. My crimes against Jim are becoming a mountain." The girls surrounded her and tried to console her. They didn't discuss the details, they just knew that they wanted their friend to go with them, tricked her into having more fun than she wanted, and then failed to protect her when she was vulnerable, leaving her to violate what she believed to be the most sacred to yourself. They wondered if they had ruined her life. The women gave Loney advice on the way home. They took her to one of them, where several of them stayed to continue mentoring her. Some of their suggestions made sense, some don't. Loney didn't want to lie to Jim again, even though she knew telling him the truth could ruin their marriage. It was a one-time event that she never planned on repeating and didn't want to happen at all. Essentially, her punishment will be to live with this secret and the guilt of what she did. This was the price for preserving his happy image of her and their life together. Jim didn't deserve a wife who cheated on him, but he also didn't deserve to have his worldview destroyed. She was never going to lie to him or cheat on him again, so why put him through this pain and risk their marriage? But this meant that in addition to accidentally cheating on him once, she would deliberately deceive him every day of her life, keeping the truth from him. It seemed terrible. A woman who does this to her man deserves to lose him. Loney wondered if realizing her continued deception would be even more damaging to Jim than her one-time mistake. He valued love and loyalty. He also valued fidelity in marriage. So what is more important to him, loyalty or devotion? That's the question, isn't it? Which will have more impact over the years? If he lost faith in her now, would he stay with her long enough to see her recover over time? And how much? How does that compare to keeping a secret from him for the rest of their lives? How will this change her, and how will it affect her attitude towards him? Each direction had its own traps. Loney thought for a long time. If Jim could overcome his infidelity, it would make more sense for her to confess now. Especially since it happened by accident, the idea of hiding it seemed like the worst option. The girls noted that it is a big risk to hope that he will be able to forgive her. Loney couldn't help but want to see Jim as soon as possible. The girls believed that she was not ready to meet him, but they understood that they could not keep her. When Loney said that she would benefit from some time away from them, their guilt took it as a rebuke. Loney got into her car and drove home, leaving behind a group of worried women. She called Jim when she was a few blocks away. "Honey, I'll be home tonight." The girls were too tired to go out. "I love them, but I love you much more. See you soon." When Loney returned home, she abandoned her bags in the kitchen, leaving them where they fell. She went straight to Jim, threw her arms around his neck, and squeezed him tightly. She said in his ear, "I'm tired, but I have to be with you." Jim looked at her to make sure. Loney was beaming with joy to be in his arms again. He took her upstairs and gave her a warm welcome. The next day, Loney was more reserved. She got up before Jim. "How did this happen?" Jim was surprised when he woke up and didn't find her in their bed. When he came downstairs, the breakfast looked like a Hyatt buffet. There were not just a few dishes, but entire layers of food. Loney told Jim that he could eat whatever he wanted, but she wanted to start with him. Loney said, "I couldn't stand being away from you. You can eat and take your time, but leave your robe unbuttoned." She gave him a lustful smile, explaining, "I've always wanted to do this." She crawled under the table and tended to him while he smacked on the food she had prepared. When she reappeared from under the table, she happily rested her chin on its surface. She looked at her husband, smiling humbly and saying, "Now the term breakfast meat has a completely different context for me." They both laughed as she climbed back onto his lap. Jim was quite happy after the morning's entertainment. Loney insisted that he shower with her anyway. He spent the afternoon happily working in the garden, knowing that Loney was glad to be home. She promised another good time in the evening and then went to bed, saying that she was still tired from the trip. Loney served a lot of alcohol in the evening, trying and ensuring that Jim was not able to carry on small talk. She then went all out to throw him off balance. On Sunday, Loney could still claim to be tired, and she believed she did the same to Jim. They went to church, where she feared spontaneous combustion for being an adulteress. She sat motionless, silently pleading with the Almighty that her crushing mistake would not bring out her innocent husband in too much pain. She prayed that the punishment would fall on her and not on Jim, because she knew that the faithful husband often suffers the most. Loney couldn't shake off her intense anxiety and depression for the rest of the day. She apologized, saying that she really needed to catch up on lost sleep. When Jim jokingly asked if she slept in Vegas, she nearly burst into tears. Of course he meant sleep. They ate the leftovers from Saturday's breakfast and will probably eat them all week. She left the table, saying she didn't need help with the dishes, and asked Jim to make himself a drink and relax in the living room. Jim was stunned when Loney suddenly appeared next to the couch. She looked worried. She answered his silent question. "Honey, I know I was acting strange. Can I do something even stranger?" She then asked permission to sit next to him, which in itself was an unusual gesture. "Sure, what's wrong, baby? You've been a little down since you left for Vegas." "I was upset that I would be away from you, and then it got worse when I returned home." She buried her face in his neck. Jim looked worried. Loney hugged him, running her hand along the back of his head, and whispered in his ear, "Darling, I will never hide anything from you. I'm afraid that I have a confession to make, and as soon as I figure out what exactly to say, I will do it." Jim tensed. What can someone confess after a trip to Vegas? Then he thought about her words and winced. Pulling back to see his face, Loney noticed his expression. She responded in a quiet voice, "I'm right on point. Jim, I'm afraid I did something wrong, but I don't know exactly what. I don't want to, so to speak, take the blame for what I did." Perhaps she didn't, or believed that she did something that she didn't do. That's why I talked to those who were there. Jim's eyes narrowed a little as he tried to process her words. Did she speak so mysteriously on purpose? It seemed inconsistent with her extreme sincerity. "When I go back to work tomorrow, I think I'll be able to put everything together. I don't want you to see me angry and broken without saying anything. I never want to hide anything from you. The thought of it really worries me. I promise, as soon as I find out myself, I will tell you everything." Jim was half puzzled. He didn't even have time to get a word in. Although it felt like a confession, it wasn't exactly one. He finally understood. Loney was warning him about a possible future confession. He furrowed his eyebrows, not quite understanding what they were talking about. "This is very unusual." The phrase came out of my mouth without much thought. Loney immediately jumped on her. "Damn right. I'm not hiding anything from you. I just don't know what happened yet. I honestly don't know what to tell you." The tension in Loney's voice was noticeable. She was already on the verge of starting to tear her hair out. "That's why I'm talking to you now." She took a deep breath to gain courage, which alarmed Jim. "Something happened. You know my inner detector. It's going crazy. I got drunk. I remember bits and pieces. Some of them seem contradictory, so I don't want to jump to conclusions. And Jim, there may have been more of some kind of substance." "Did you take something?" Jim couldn't believe it. "No," Loney answered forcefully. She looked him in the eyes apologetically and slowly, squeezing his hands, she replied, "But maybe they put something in my drink." "Oh God." His face literally melted. Loney began to cry. Darling, darling, I'm scared. Forgive me. I remember dancing with men, and I think I was being groped. But I don't think I was taken to a dark corner, because I still remember that I was on the dance floor. And dear, it's precisely because I don't know exactly what happened that I was wondering whether to start this conversation now. But I can't hide anything from you. But I don't want you to be angry because that might not have happened. As soon as I start telling you, you will want clarity and answers, which I don't have right now. Can you explain the situation? Can you tell me something? Do you need medical help? Jim remembered how active and passionate they had been since Loney had returned home. She didn't move as if she was bothered or injured. He didn't notice any strange marks or bruises on her. Oh, Jim, it's terrible. It was last night. Our hotel was the party center for everyone from the exhibition. There were thousands of people there. They had a great bar, but also a dance club that was part of the hotel. It was huge. I I think I remember the kisses, but it could be a dream. I was with others, so they should know. I know that my colleagues were very insistent that my glass was never empty. Persistent that I didn't realize how much I drank scares the hell out of me. I'm scared, dear. I don't want to believe that I could have done what I probably did. Jim shook his head, trying to clear it. Wait, I think I'm already confused. Loney's words sounded like they should make sense, but he couldn't quite grasp the gist of them. He wasn't sure what she was talking about. No, honey, I need to cancel everything and go back to our regular program. Jim wanted to address an invisible audience, as if he were in a television studio. What do such phrases even mean? Loney also had phrases. If I really did something I didn't want, then I harmed not only myself, but also you. Her eyes widened even more. And if I hurt both of us, then I damaged our marriage. I pray that tomorrow at work it turns out that someone just hugged me and kissed me goodbye. If that's true, that means I remember less than 10% of what happened that night. I'm scared to death that it's only 2%, and then I really— oh God, what a terrible expression. Forgive me. Loney was confused because her words seemed completely out of control. She struggled to express her thoughts. Jim, my dear, I hope it's nothing. I pray it's nothing. But I thought it was better to risk you thinking less of me than for you to think that I'm hiding something from you. This was perhaps the strangest moment in Jim's life. Loney just hinted at cheating. He wanted to ask her more questions, and it was absolutely necessary. Did she do this on purpose? Has she initiated intimacy with another man? Did she want this? Did she retreat, but they still put something on her? Or was she a victim from the start? These were enormous differences in responsibility. He still didn't understand what he was dealing with. Except for one thing. The woman he loved suffered, and because she was afraid that she had harmed him. He really wanted to know if she wanted something to happen or not. This was fundamentally important. It all seemed unreal, which unexpectedly turned out to be a blessing. Because it was unreal, he didn't feel insulted or offended. His stomach was knotted with the feeling that something was wrong, but without concrete facts, he could focus on his poor wife. He just reminded himself how much effort she had put into pleasing him over the last weekend, and how easy it would have been for her to say nothing to him, at least until she knew more. She put a lot of faith in him and showed him great respect. If she deliberately wanted to cheat on him, this would all be undermined. But now it seems unlikely. Jim always tried to do the right thing. He needed to reassure Loney, "Come here, honey." Loney raised her head sharply, surprised that he wanted to hug her. He could tell from her expression that she was completely broken. Her eyes seemed to double in size with hope. He thought, what did she expect? That I will drive her away just on the basis of this strange conversation. He barely had time to stretch out his arms before Loney flew into his arms, hugging his shoulders from below. In her desperation to hold on to Jim, Loney clawed at his back through his shirt. She burst into tears, clinging to his chest. His wife was certainly broken, but he was sure that she loved him. She became fixated on her possible feelings of guilt. Jim thought, don't go down another path, just focus on this. Give her what she needs. Loney spoke with the girls privately before starting work. She explained that they were all working on assumptions and asked them to share the facts they knew. They spent some time after work collecting and comparing known facts. For the first time, Loney was able to piece together a picture of that evening. It was a real comedy of errors and a vivid example of how, if everyone is responsible for something, then no one is responsible. She was even more confused by their attempts to distract herself the next morning, further burying her memories. Plus, those damn lights turning on in the room she now called the adultery room really threw her off balance. Loney thought she knew who she was with. It was an attractive man with a certain brutal charisma. But she didn't see what movie stars looked like in the morning because those damn lamps blinded her. She reproached herself for wondering whether truly beautiful people, even with a hangover and lack of sleep, looked the same as ordinary people. But was this the right thought for her? Her husband definitely won't like it. This man, being so handsome, will only confuse the situation even more. All perceptions of Jim's attractiveness will be distorted if viewed through the prism of how handsome her possible casual partner is. Jim will wonder if he's attractive enough to keep her. Would his wife, who frankly is 1 point higher than Jim on a scale of 10, now consider herself 2 points higher? Will this cause her disappointment and friction between them? How can he help but wonder if any handsome man could make his wife lose control? Jim was always confident in his appearance, which was nice. Loney felt sick at the thought that Jim would now begin to attach more importance to her appearance. If this guy was as handsome as she remembered, his looks might cost her Jim. If she did fall, she was sure his appearance played a role. Damn her for being so shallow. Would Jim believe that on some level she wanted to be with a handsome man? How could she convince Jim that this was not the case, especially if she was afraid it was true? And then Loney thought, why would such a handsome man, who could seduce anyone, need to use drugs for sex? She needed to stick to the facts. Every time she went into guesswork, she ended up getting even more confused. Oh damn, she was afraid that she actually ended up in bed with him. Loney hated herself. When Loney entered the house, she collapsed on the kitchen chair. She was completely exhausted. She blamed herself the whole way home, and by the time she got out of the car, she was sure she had killed Jimmy Hoffa. With one glance, Jim read it like an open book. He could barely contain his laughter when he asked, "How was your day at work?" "We've made good progress," Loney replied in a quiet voice. She invited him to come closer and hugged his arm tightly. "Darling, I haven't figured everything out yet. I can't explain everything today. Maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. May I try to state what I think happened then?" She looked at her husband with a truly pained expression. "Unfortunately, no one saw what was most important to us." She fell silent for a moment. "Honey, what if I really did something bad? I pray that this is not the case. I love you." It seemed to Jim that she was not asking a question, but was simply venting her worries. "Loney, we have to dig deeper to find answers. Perhaps the most important of them are not outside, but within ourselves." Loney winced. "Jim, you want to know if on some level I wanted to be with this man. Do you think I don't want to find this answer either? I don't remember wanting anything like that." Her eyes turned to his face. "You were a great partner in this difficult moment for me. You didn't reproach me. You didn't even condemn me. You keep relying on me. Dare I say that you believe in me? Jim, you may still have a chance to be rewarded for your faith. Perhaps I don't remember anything bad because nothing bad happened. But dear, we must confirm this. At this stage, I cannot ask you to continue to trust me blindly. You're standing on the edge and ready to jump for me. We both need to know what's down there, the sea or the parking lot. I can't let you take this step if it hurts you. I have to know. I think I'm a good person. I know that sometimes you get so drunk that your brain shuts down and your body does what it wants. Then it regrets it the next day, but that's nothing compared to what the mind and heart feel. I constantly pray to justify your faith in me and that I will not change." Loney shook her head. "We can't continue to live like this. We need to know. I'm terribly afraid of losing you if I stumbled. It will make you ask hundreds of questions you never wanted to ask. But without knowledge, you are faced with thousands of questions looming from all sides. I don't know how long you can withstand these worst-case scenarios. You can't fight them like that. If they are confirmed, you may be able to overcome them one day, but in this form you cannot even begin to fight. I want to fight for you, and now the only way is to get the answers I need. Can you imagine how terrible it is not to know your own nature? I thought I knew who I was, but maybe I was an adulteress. I don't know if we can get over this, but the worst part is that I don't even know if we need to get over this. This is absurd. Her head dropped along with her shoulders. Loney, you said the girls at work made you drink. This is not the same as deliberately going out with some man. You didn't plan or want any of this to happen. But Jim, although this is true, I'm still in this terrible limbo, and I've dragged you into this with me. I know history is full of warnings about excessive drinking, and being careful at a bachelorette party is not a new rule. Perhaps I always avoided such situations because I knew it was hidden in me. Maybe I knew there was a Mr. Hyde in me that could break free and cause some mischief. Loney, Dr. Jekyll did not control Mr. Hyde. You shouldn't blame yourself if your body takes over and follows your instincts. Loney came up with the answer, but Jekyll still felt guilty and ashamed that Hyde was a part of him. We fight our baser instincts. It's unrealistic to think that we don't have them. It is quite possible that this is precisely the mistake that allows us to relax and succumb to them. Loney could hardly contain her disappointment. Jim, look at the conversation we're having. I may have slept with the entire Las Vegas male choir. Neither of us can deny it at this point. Loney, I bet you didn't sleep with the whole choir. And what's more, Las Vegas doesn't have a choir. If you did something that extreme, you'd know, and you'd probably be in hospital right now. She wanted to know the truth, not only for herself, but also for him. His goodwill would eventually be destroyed by doubts. She put her hands on her hips, trying to make him understand. Jim, are you sure I didn't cheat on you? There is a lot of evidence that I could do this. If they weren't there, maybe I could let it go. She softened significantly. Jim, I want to serve you, but I don't know how, because I don't know if I'm a good person. I know one thing. I never thought I would be in this situation, and here I am. I've already fallen. I just don't know how far. Loney, I don't like to worry too early. We don't know what we're dealing with. You might as well assume that they slipped something into your drink or lowered your inhibitions. You can't blame yourself for this. You need to let go a little bit and give yourself time to gain perspective. Loney looked into his eyes with despair. Jim, you love me. You prove it every hour. You want to protect me, but you don't know how exactly right now. Until we know what happened, we cannot determine what action to take. Do I need more self-discipline to keep Hyde in chains? Do I need to take revenge on the one who took advantage of me? These words stopped him in his tracks. And Jim, Dr. Jekyll, may have felt guilty about what he did as Hyde, but he enjoyed it. You can't tell me that you don't have a shadow of a doubt that on some level I didn't want to scratch that itch. If that's the case, you have to wonder, when will he be strong enough for me to cheat again? How can I regain and earn the faith you place in me, greater than I have in myself? Jim, the only way to dispel these doubts is to find out what really happened and take appropriate action. Even if this is the worst-case scenario and I really fell, if you give me a chance, I will prove to you that I will never do this again. But we don't know. Maybe I just got drunk and fell asleep on his blanket. Maybe he turned out to be a real prince, even if I didn't act like a lady. But you can't reassure me, and I can't clear your doubts without answers. I love you, but without answers I cannot prove my devotion to you. I cannot earn this enormous faith that you show me. Without answers, I can't love you the way you deserve, and it's tearing me apart. Loney, there's a lot to think about here. First of all, if you actually had something put in your drink and something happened to you against your will, it's not your fault, period. This only adds to the tragedy of going out with your colleagues for the first time. This doesn't mean you put a "use me" sign around your neck. These people know how to choose victims. They most likely noticed your uncertainty in new circumstances. Honestly, vibrations like that say positive things about you, not negative ones. He rubbed his bottom lip with his knuckle before continuing, "The only thing that makes me wonder is your own doubts about whether you wanted an affair with another man, and also your words that there is more evidence confirming your betrayal than evidence exonerating you. I want to warn you, you must remember that you have told me almost nothing specific about what happened." Her hand covered her mouth as he explained the matter to her. "You told me you might have been groped while dancing. Although you haven't actually said that you danced yet, I can only guess from your words. You said you could have been kissed. You said you didn't think you were taken to a dark corner. Then you said you might be guilty of sleeping with the entire Las Vegas male choir. I don't know what to think. I don't have a specific framework. Judging by your words, you may have kissed someone, but you act as if you were undergoing a serious casting for sex." He raised his hands, palms forward, in a calming gesture. "Eventually, you will need to tell me what you are afraid of. I understand that you might not have done this. I understand that you don't remember anything happening. But I don't know if we're talking about something that just happened one night on the dance floor, or if you've been in bed with that choir all week." He fell silent, giving her the opportunity to speak. What else could he say? Loney was absolutely right. He needed concrete details before he could give any answer. Loney nodded sadly. "Jim, I always lectured the girls about misbehavior. I think they got me drunk to show me that their fun was harmless. They didn't try to force me to do anything more than just dance. With them, honey, I feel guilty because I've never gotten this drunk and danced with other men. And I know that I did both, so I already have a reason for guilt, even if nothing else happened. It's tearing me apart. I didn't want to do this now. Next time I won't have a problem not doing this, but what else did I manage to do during this time? I literally don't know what I did. I'm not just being dramatic. Of course I can say, what have I done, when I find out what I did, but I hope it's not so. Oh God, I don't mean I hope I don't say that. I hope I don't do that." Jim frowned. "I need that guidebook again." Loney continued as if she hadn't heard him. "Honey, in case things turn out bad, and, and we don't know that yet." She hastened to add, "Can you still hug me, right now?" Yes, he looked at them. They were already in an embrace. He was already hugging her. Could you? I'm so scared. I love you so much. I don't understand how this happened. I'm scared that I don't know what happened. My inner detector hasn't calmed down since then. My inner detector doesn't lie, but it doesn't get drunk very often. Honey, if I did something that would harm us, I just want to die. I want to say this now so it doesn't sound like an excuse for bad behavior later." Jim wanted to point out that her death wish seemed like a typical exaggeration that they should avoid, but he decided to be supportive. "Loney, I think it would be better if we talked tomorrow instead of putting it off until Wednesday. You've dropped a few hints this evening about the events of that night, but I'm still completely confused about what happened. I can help you without knowing all the details, but it would be much easier if I knew at least something." Jim held Loney a little longer. He then gently pulled her hand away from his and practically carried her into their bedroom, where he helped her undress and held her until she calmed down. He then put a robe on her and took her back to the kitchen, where he prepared them a light dinner. He tried to keep her close all evening. Loney was half lost in her thoughts. He didn't like it at all. The next morning, Jim watched his wife closely. Although she still looked lost in thought, Loney at least seemed more collected. She knew Jim was there, even though she barely interacted with him. She made 2 cups of coffee, but said nothing as she ate her small breakfast. She was efficient and organized, which was an improvement, but she was virtually devoid of emotion. Jim chalked it up to her anxiety about the upcoming conversation that evening. He was sure she wasn't trying to hide anything. After all, she had already indirectly pleaded guilty to treason. Loney was still preoccupied with thoughts of how to get the answers she so desperately needed. Jim finished work and left a little early to organize everything for their conversation, making the environment comfortable, minimizing distractions, having water and perhaps cheese ready in case a snack was needed. He knew they would need to eat something, but a full dinner seemed out of place. Jim was sitting on a kitchen chair, thinking about the future, when the doorbell rang. Jim opened the door and saw a group of nervous young women, Loney's colleagues, standing on the threshold. They introduced themselves, and he told them that Loney wasn't home yet. The women replied that they knew and remained standing indecisively. They exchanged glances like a flock of frightened birds. One of the women standing in front spoke up. "We know, Jim. That's why we came. She's not at home, Jim. She has already left." The woman looked at Jim with an expression of deep pain. "Loney's gone." Something in Jim's stomach snapped. "What are you saying? Did Loney leave me?" "Oh no, not just you, Jim. She left town." "What?" Jim couldn't believe his voice, which sounded more shrill than he would have liked. The woman looked nervously at her friends again. The same one who spoke before spoke again. "Wait, it didn't sound right. Loney will return as soon as her needs are satisfied." Jim hoped his jaw didn't drop as low as he thought it would. The woman raised her hand in a timeout gesture. "I expressed myself incorrectly." The women behind her nodded nervously in agreement. "I wanted to say that Loney will come back as soon as she gets what she needs." "What?" There was a note of despair in Jim's voice. The woman looked even more embarrassed. "No, no, that's not what I wanted to say either." "Well, I meant it, but—" Someone from the group shouted at her from behind. The woman cringed and quickly tried again. "Loney will come back. She didn't leave you." The woman was glad that she had finally conveyed the right message. "She just went to see him again." This time, Jim didn't have to ask what. The question hung in the air. The women looked terrible, but not because they sympathized with him. Their expressions were more like those who were ready to burn the hated witch. Their gazes literally drilled into the back of their representative. Jim's eyes narrowed, trying to understand. His question was aimed not only at finding out their intentions, but also at assessing how poorly they were executing their plan. "Are you here to comfort me? Is that your goal, Trish?" The woman recoiled when she heard that he knew her name. "And you, Mary? Is this what you came for, Betty? Are you saying that she went to another meeting and everything will be fine if I just take her back when she satisfies her needs? Is this your message, Crystal, Holly, and Steph?" The girls exchanged glances again, wondering how Jim knew their names. "I, if you need it emotionally, well, but more to explain what's going on, and we make a complete mess of it." Jim nodded. The female speaker looked back at her friends for support before continuing. "I know we've met at office parties, but you have a fantastic memory. You know us all by name." His finger came up and pointed at Trish's chest. Before she could feel proud or embarrassed, Jim explained. "You all must have come straight from work. You still have name tags hanging on you." Trish blushed at the thought that he remembered her because of her cleavage, and the others felt stupid. Jim shook his head, feeling that it was too late to lose patience. "Why don't you all come in, calm down, and slowly explain to me exactly what you want me to know?" The women smiled shyly, nodding their heads, trying to figure out which of them would enter first, so as not to create a crowd at the door. As soon as they sat down in the living room, some of the women stood up again with obvious concern and began to apologize for getting Loney drunk in Vegas. Jim sat down with the knowledge that perhaps the standing women would follow his example. He waited until they realized they were talking at the same time and organized themselves, or he would have to take control of the situation. He really wanted to pour himself some bourbon. Almost like a conductor, when the women began to fall silent from their anxiety, Jim motioned for everyone to sit down and give the floor to one speaker. He had to guide them over and over again to get them to speak in turns, but he got better with each attempt. Their story was chaotic and self-contained, just as the women spoke at the same time, sincerely trying to help. He wondered if this was where his wife got her way of speaking when she was depressed. Like he told his wife, he really needed a guide so he wouldn't get lost in the story. "She didn't want it, but we forced her," one of the women exclaimed loudly so that the others could hear her. Her statement instantly brought silence to the group. Jim's eyes widened in shock. Another woman was quick to intervene, correcting the misunderstanding, her gaze reproaching the one who had caused it. No. Simply no. We planned to give her a lot of booze. Did we do too well, so to speak? Or was it too effective? She quickly paused, thinking, then visibly shook her head and continued, Anyway, we accidentally got her half to death drunk. We wanted her to relax, but we overdid it. Poor Loney was practically on the edge. Why did she drink so much? Why didn't you keep an eye on her? We thought we were looking after her, but we were too drunk ourselves. So we were. Too efficient at getting her drunk. She didn't even realize how much she had drunk. She thought she was keeping normal, and we deliberately slowed her down so that she would allow herself to relax. In the end, we are confident that it surpassed even our accelerated pace. Jim muttered involuntarily, Half of any real quantity cannot be zero. They simply looked at him with incomprehension. After the girls looked at each other to see if anyone had an answer or understanding of what he said, one of them timidly spoke up. Well, we were just too efficient at everything. She looked at the girl who asked the question earlier and asked, Or is it effective? The girls looked at each other again, not knowing if they were able to get their story across. Jim felt a headache, but that didn't stop him. What friends? You pushed her into behavior she didn't want and then left her defenseless. The girl happily slapped her nose. Happy that she had gotten the picture right, she ecstatically declared, That's exactly what we did. She turned around, nodding triumphantly to her friends. Their painful expressions made her think. She turned back to Jim to continue. Loney even warned us about this behavior. Of course, we wanted to prove her wrong. She stopped smiling. What she said shouldn't have made her happy. The joy quickly left her. And now she hates us, and we are afraid that we have damaged her consciousness. Jim considered this particular wording. He shook his head, driving away the thought. One of the girls suggested to Jim, Loney is unhappy. She doesn't tell you how much she's suffering because she doesn't want you to think she's manipulating you. My wife has never manipulated me. Cheerfully hoping to help, one of the women said, You mean, not yet, but she's never cheated before. The women looked at each other again, surprised by what Holly said. They looked at each other again and simultaneously turned to Jim to see if he noticed the cheating comment. They didn't come here to ruin Loney's marriage or break her husband's heart. Have you lost trust in her? One asked. No, but she has completely lost her confidence. I'm afraid it's a ticking time bomb. Look, this is our mess, but Loney won't let us help her. She doesn't want anything to do with us. She's looking for another job so she doesn't have to see us. What? She is heartbroken, truly heartbroken, because she loves you more than life itself. Jim wasn't sure that was what she wanted to say, or at least how she wanted to say it. He shook his head, driving away the thought. He noticed that he was squinting as he listened to them. Loney would give her life to make you happy, but she doesn't know how. Holly, confused by her words, wondered out loud, is Loney messed up to kill herself? Or to make you happy? I think the second is what I meant. One of the women behind her rolled her eyes as Holly finally pulled herself together again. Still, Loney can't understand how she could do something against her own nature. Now she asks questions that seem ridiculous. She looked around at the other women before attempting to clarify her statement. You know, like, I'm a slutty bitch and I didn't even know it. Nothing good can come of this, right? Although we should be proud of who we really are. The others' heads turned back to Holly, silently asking, What did she just say? Holly swallowed hard at the looks on her friends' faces, then tried again, I mean, Jim. Her face suddenly paled. It's Jim, right? You're that person she keeps talking about, aren't you? The women's mouths dropped open at the same time. Jim had no answer to the second question. He tried not to let the group's confusion spill over into his own brain. He answered the first question, I'm Jim. Holly looked back at her friends with a proud, see, I told you so expression. Well, Jimbo, we've all had those awkward days when you wake up and find someone in your bed. You don't remember where you met him, how you chose him, how you got home, or even if it was good. or whatever the hell his name is." The women blushed with embarrassment. Holly cringed at their reaction. She tried to continue. "The point is, when you get that drunk, you turn off your mind and heart, and your body is left on its own. You wonder how you managed to have sex at all, when it is appropriate to say that you were not in control of the situation, and do not even remember whether you were a passive participant. That's when self-hatred begins." She smiled, confident that she had made the right point. Everyone looked at her with their mouths open, including Jim. He couldn't hide the disbelief in his voice as he asked, "You're trying to help Loney, aren't you?" Cringing again at the group's reaction, Holly looked at Loney's husband. Let me guess. You've never had nights like this, have you?" Jim shook his head. "Are you saying that my wife had?" His voice rose. Holly let out a nervous hum that could have come from her stomach or even lower. Sometimes it's better to just run away. Mentally, Holly put on her running shoes. It's not an exaggeration to say that Loney hates herself for what she did to you. You see, she broke her vow and slept with someone when she never wanted to. She was proud that she had found a man so good that she didn't want anyone else, and here she had an extra one. Just remember, Jim, that while her betrayal is against you, it is also against her. Remember this when you count points for broken trust and damaged love for her. Although this is all very real, it all happened by accident. At least you two are in this together." Holly stopped and beamed. She laid it all out. She wasn't sure if she had everything in the right order, but it was a lot of information to put down. Holly became aware of a sound. It seemed like everyone was hissing, not on purpose. They sucked air through their teeth. She didn't run away from the worst-case scenario. She accidentally bumped into him in fear, and it looks like she was still trying to set a new record. Realizing that she had done everything wrong, she drove her midges like a whip to speed up her sled, already uncontrollable on thin ice. And now, instead of having a worthy woman standing up for you, you are suddenly married to a woman with a bad reputation, or as she often says now, damaged goods. I mean, unless it's straight-up junk. There was a collective groan in the room. Not only did Holly constantly find ways to make things worse, but she was incredibly good at it. But here's good news. We don't think she's guilty. No, she was our victim." Holly wiped her brow with a big smile on her face. The other ladies watched as Jim's face took on different shades of the rainbow. One of the women hit Holly in the back of the head. Another of the women decided to speak. She tried to sound more collected than Holly. Her job wasn't difficult. "Mr. Jim, sir, maybe let just one of us stay and tell you what we think happened and what your wife is doing now. Yes, she's broken, but hopefully not in the way Holly described it to you. Although, on the other hand, maybe we should all stay and Holly go." Jim countered, "How about we start with Holly leaving right now, and then we'll get back together and figure out the rest." He didn't ask this question. "Accepted," the new representative said happily, pushing Holly towards the door. The others joined her in helping Holly out, one of them walking out with Holly to explain to the upset girl exactly what she had done wrong. The others slowly returned and sat around Jim in his living room. Unusually calm, Jim voiced his expectations. "Now, ladies, tell me what the hell happened in Vegas." His face took on a quiet, menacing shine, like that of a dedicated killer. They collectively gulped. "Okay, sir, we'll tell you everything in order. We'll tell you what we know for sure, which isn't much. Then we'll tell you what we think happened in the gray areas and say how confident we are in each assumption." Jim felt that they were finally getting to the point. Jim listened to everything. He sat back as they laid out all the details. He didn't say a word. He was in his own world, or perhaps his own personal hell. The girls watched with pain how the betrayal of a loved one destroys the one who remained faithful. Even though they knew how much Loney loved Jim, by the time they were done, they realized that someone who has been cheated on cannot be sure that they are truly loved. Discussing this later, they realized that many things they had taken for granted were not true, and that they needed to change their behavior. But this still did not bring poor Loney and Jim out of the dead end. Something they had always thought was insignificant, And something they didn't have to worry about had a terrible effect on Jim. He simply took every blow, unable to defend himself or fight back. He simply accepted everything and silently seethed. They were so frightened by his reaction that they expected to hear an ominous "muahahaha" at any moment. Finally, Jim broke the silence. "What you're telling me means that my wife was probably intimate with another man." Crystal spoke slowly and carefully, trying to sound like a wise advisor as much as she could. "I'm not trying to be a sophist. The word intimacy suggests a degree of intimacy that was completely absent from what happened or didn't happen. We believe, and your wife does too, that she had sex with a man, not two or more, just one. And he was drunk too. The fact that the morning light in their room disoriented them hopefully indicates that he may not have been able to follow through." Conversations with Jim were not as easy as with her friends, who seemed to understand her regardless of the words she used. Rubbing his forehead, Jim asked quietly, "How can we know Loney didn't enjoy it if she doesn't remember anything?" He immediately regretted asking this question. This conversation seemed to have already cost him 10 ick points. The women looked at each other. The last speaker thought out loud, "Maybe I underestimated Holly in this confession." All the girls looked confused, including Crystal, as she spoke up. "Listen, sir, Loney was and is terrified. She remembers waking up in some man's room. That in itself is bad enough, and she wasn't fully clothed, if not naked." Jim was about to explode at this revelation when the girl added an important nuance. "What she doesn't know is how involved she was in this, and it's killing her. She doesn't know if she was unconscious and the guy brought her there. She doesn't know if he undressed her. She doesn't even know if she was drugged with something. She doesn't know if she agreed to go, doesn't know if she was unconscious the whole time, or if anything even happened. God forbid she doesn't even know if she rode him like a rodeo clown while under the influence." The girls turned their heads in her direction again. She started well, but lost her way again. Crystal sat up straight, rubbing her hands in frustration, and chided herself. "Damn it. This is much more difficult than it seems. Damn nerves ruin the story." Crystal felt someone hit the back of her head. She quickly replied, "Wait, before you send me to Holly's car, here's what Loney knows. She doesn't remember if sex actually happened. She knows for sure that she didn't want to have sex and that she didn't want this guy. Also that she got drunk because we did everything except pour alcohol down her throat. She remembers dancing, but only because we dragged her to the dance floor. We took her out there several times because she kept leaving while she could still think. She knows that the only reason she drank alcohol or went dancing was because she trusted us. She knows we failed her. You need to know this too. Loney was only put in a situation where she could fail because we put her there." Crystal opened her palms and looked at Jim with a furrowed brow. "Jim, Loney trusted us. Before all this, we believed that we could be trusted. Yes, we like to have fun, maybe a little more than is socially accepted. But we are all single. We won't admit it, but if we found a guy to settle down with, we'd jump at the chance and never go out again. Until we find it, we have each other. We love that we don't sit at home waiting for Prince Charming to ring our doorbell. We don't live in our parents' basements and hide from the world. I think these are positives. You have to understand the dynamic. We don't have men, but we have each other. What binds us is mutual support. We can trust each other." Loney knew this, and we convinced her that for once she could relax and we would support her. But we totally screwed it up, Jim. That's why we're here. You and Loney are all sad and broken, but it's not Loney's fault. She never liked our wild side of going out, and we never imagined she would end up in this situation. We just wanted her to have fun and relax a little with us. We convinced her that we would take care of her the same way she takes care of us at work and in our personal lives when we go too far or face the fact that we do not have a loving man and children at home. Our disappointment is bitter for us. We have to admit that maybe we're stuck in this lifestyle because we've chosen this path, not because we're missing something that Loney has. We asked Loney to spend one night with us and ruin the life we all respected so much. We have certainly proved that we cannot be like Loney. Crystal hesitated. What the hell is the plural of Loney's name? She brushed the thought aside. Loney is living her best life with you, and she knows it. We never wanted to destroy what you have together. What happened was terrible, and it's our fault, but you and Loney still have to get through it and deal with it. All these strong emotions should prove to you that she loves you madly, and you need to know this too. Crystal sighed. If she had seen how surprised and impressed her friends were, she wouldn't have been so calm as she sat next to Jim, touching his wrist. Loney was always on the other side of our arguments about how to have a good time, and always because that she had an example of a good husband and marriage that she could tell us about. We didn't understand how a few dances could ruin that, otherwise we would never have started this whole chain of events. We all apologize for this, although an apology probably doesn't mean anything to you right now. Above all, Loney knows she loves you. It tears her apart because even though she didn't intend to, somehow she still betrayed you. Since there is no evidence to exonerate her, the fact that there is no evidence to convict her, other than weak examples, does not stop her from thinking that she is guilty. All the girls, surprised and delighted with Crystal, buried their heads in their hands. Loney thinks the worst, which means she believes she is not only spoiled, but also a traitor to the best man she has ever met. You are the person by whom she judges everyone else, the person who is everything to her, her husband, her love, and her best friend. It kills her to think that she betrayed all these people. She is obsessed with the idea that she is now dirty and that she has hurt you. Jim was impressed that she could say all of this without pausing for breath. Crystal's last words, however, changed his mood. Loney is out there, practically destroyed, and she needs you. What? Why didn't you say this before? Where is she? What do I need to do? Crystal nodded vigorously to the beat of some invisible metronome, repeating, She's on the edge, Jimbo. What she did may seem terrible, but it's all for a better cause. Loney feels like she has to tell you everything and has to know what she did before she can do it. So she found a way to find that guy. We think we have figured out who he is. She's heading to Hoboken to talk to him and find out exactly what she did. Hoboken? Yes, what a huge sacrifice. I think you should also sacrifice and go there to stop her. I mean, this is a job for a super husband. Loney is vulnerable. It wouldn't take much effort for this guy to find a way to blackmail her. What if he really has huge potential? I mean, she already fell for it once, right? What are the chances that she will fall for the same trick again? Crystal thought for a moment, biting her lip, and suggested more subduedly, Loney is in such a state now that she can do anything to avoid causing you more pain. And frankly, further humiliation in her position would not be the end of the world. Oh my God, you think she wants? No, a chorus of voices rang out. Then there were a few pop sounds as the ladies lined up to punch their friend in the back of the head. Jim winced, trying to break through the mental fog that Crystal had created between his ears. Okay, I'll go, but one of you will go with me. I need an indicator in case something goes wrong, and neither my wife nor I are suitable for this role. You mean you want one of us to go too, Hoboken? Crystal asked, then swallowed loudly. Crystal's friends looked at her. One slapped her on the back of the head again. She gritted her teeth as she explained, Jim, if you ever need an example of someone who is eager to fight, only to fall back into self-loathing, just remember how I volunteered to help you today. Crystal closed her eyes. Showing her determination, she raised her finger in the air and announced, to Hoboken. The fact that even the major airlines were reluctant to fly to Hoboken saved the day. Although Loney had more than an hour's head start, she was detained at the airport while waiting for her flight. Jim and Crystal were able to book tickets on the same plane on their way to the airport. Jim discovered that although his new companion, nicknamed Crystal Light by the rest of the group, was perhaps not the smartest, she was still a loyal friend. When they found Loney in the waiting room, the three hugged as if they hadn't seen each other in centuries instead of hours. For her part, Loney was thrilled that Jim was coming with her to support her. She couldn't believe it. He supported her along the path where she expected to hear that she had betrayed him. She held on to Jim tighter, knowing that this might be the last time he would allow this. As Loney began to explain that she had tracked down the person who had the incident, she suddenly realized that she didn't know what to call him. She offered, partner in crime against her husband, and her eyes began to fill with tears. Crystal, trying to prevent tears, inserted, beloved, which earned her a displeased look. In the end, they settled on a common he pronounced with obvious disgust. Unwilling to let the incident slide, Crystal attempted to explain away her blunder using the word lover. Turning to Loney, she said, well, I just didn't want to call him your lover in front of your husband. Jim was standing right next to him. Loney's eyes flickered between anger and tears. Jim just hugged Loney a little tighter. After overcoming these difficulties, Loney explained that she called an acquaintance while working at the beginning of the day, asking if they could talk, and the sooner the better. The man replied that he could work from home in the afternoon. She was already fed up with everything, and she could no longer put off the conversation with her dear husband. Loney got his address and told him she would meet him after lunch at his house. It seemed to Jim that Loney was trying to avoid mentioning his name. He wondered why. Loney didn't say it out loud, but she wondered what it looked like. She prayed that he was not much more handsome than her husband. She retained the memory of the man she danced with as a very impressive man. His good looks would explain part of her downfall, but then poor Jim would be worried about her being around attractive men in the future. Damn, she knew how to choose. Waking up from her thoughts, Loney timidly added, I gave him it is clear to understand that this meeting is only for the sake of obtaining information. The trio pulled up to an unremarkable small house in a row of equally unremarkable houses. It seemed to be an older neighborhood, something like the Levittown development of the late 60s. She remembered the handsome man she had danced with. His name, Alistair, was as dignified as his speech and classic appearance. This was clearly not what Loney was expecting. Here you go, sweet home, Crystal said with some mockery. Turning to Jim, she added cheerfully, as if that might actually ease his pain, you can probably stop worrying about Loney changing you. Jim heard his wife sob and looked at Crystal with contempt. He hasn't spoken much since they left his house. We don't know his circumstances. Maybe he's doing very well compared to others. I would prefer this to housing in the city center. Although, again, I'd rather have a barn in the country than this, Jim said. Location, 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 Crystal replied, wondering if she was being reprimanded. One look told her no. Jim was confused, and in pain. It was written all over his face. It dawned on her what he was probably thinking and obsessing over. He was about to meet a man who, whether Loney had gone willingly or not, knew his wife biblically. He and his wife never discussed the act itself, beating around the bush, but not daring to talk about it directly. Crystal knew that Jim's reaction to the house was unconscious. His thoughts were somewhere else, so the comment came from his nature. Her mouth dropped open. He was a good man. His wife didn't want to, but still cheated on him, and it should have torn him apart, but he was here to help her. Except that poor Jim had nowhere to release his misery. Thank God they contacted Loney and came here all together. Despite her frivolity, Crystal understood the conclusion a husband would come to if he were told that his wife had cheated on him, and then she promised to talk about it in half a week, only to return home for that conversation and find that his wife had just left from the state to the man with whom she cheated. Wow, most wives will never be able to convince their husbands that the trip was purely informational. At least not information that a loving husband would want his loving wife to collect. As for Jim, even if he could give Loney the benefit of the doubt, the shock of him showing up for that very conversation only to find she wasn't there, or the awkwardness of having already left to visit Citizen X, would hurt them huge damage. For poor Jim, there were too many dark directions for his imagination. The three stopped in front of the front door. Everyone was silent, as if in an elevator. Crystal looked at Jim, who looked at Loney, who looked at the rug, feeling a kinship with him. The door opened after a knock. In front of them stood the archetypal skinny, cunning asshole. He stood leaning to the side, perhaps due to poor posture, perhaps due to scoliosis. His hair was thinning and could do with a good shampoo. His teeth were fine and his breath didn't smell, which was a nice change from the rest of the picture. Was it Loney's lover? Jim didn't know whether to laugh at the idea or crawl away, knowing that his wife had traded him in for this wonderful specimen of manhood. When Jim looked at his wife, it made her feel even worse. Loney read her husband's thoughts in his face and held back a sigh. It said, "You traded me for him?" She knew that Jim was now looking for more serious problems in their relationship. There was no way to explain to Jim that this was not the man she expected. Saying that it would be easier for her to cheat on him with someone more attractive would not help convince Jim that he could still trust her. It took longer than she thought to get over all this. At first, Loney was worried about her husband, but mostly she dealt with her own anguish. Now she began to feel Jim's suffering and torment. She knew he was keeping everything inside to help her. Damn it, why did this happen? Why did this happen to her, but of course why to Jim? There was no way such a good person should have struggled with this. A strange thought struck her. None of us lives without pain and worry. Who else, if not a truly good person, can cope with them and move on? This thought was running through her head, giving her some relief that everything could end well, but at the same time making her feel even more guilty. My husband is suffering because of my mistakes, and if it can be corrected, he will bear the brunt. Crystal stared at the man in the doorway, then turned to Loney, then repeated the sequence, finally asking, "Damn it, what were we drinking that night?" Now afraid of what she might have done but didn't remember, Loney couldn't find her voice. Then Crystal stood on her tiptoes and whispered in Jim's ear, "At least you don't have to worry about competition." She poked him in the ribs as she continued, "I haven't used that word since I was a kid, but germs are always in my frontal lobe." Biting his lower lip, Jim nodded, shaking off his shock that Crystal knew anything about the frontal lobes at all. His wife looked at them with tears in her eyes. Recognizing the absurdity of the man's appearance, Loney muttered to Jim in shock, "I'll take a second STD test, honey." In response, he nodded quickly again. Crystal nodded too. Then Loney saw Jim look down. She closed her eyes, knowing what he was thinking. Loney had just confirmed to Jim that she was with another man. It already seemed like a fait accompli, but here it is confirmation. She felt terrible and began to tremble. She stood there guilty, with her hands folded in her lap, and realized, I should have hugged him when I first told him what happened. Even though he heard it straight from me, I ruined that too. Then she noticed her husband straightening his shoulders and raising his head. His breathing was a little artificial, but calm, and he forced himself to keep his balance because he had to get the job done. She knew how hard it was for him, but he put her and duty above all else. Loney felt great respect for Jim at that moment. It seemed to her that if their roles were reversed, she would become a screaming, thrashing, blaming, emotional puddle. And then I thought, but Jim could handle this. She felt as insignificant as a mosquito that might bother a noble elephant. Okay, he said, everyone knows more than me. Someone tell me what happened. The other man asked if they wanted to come in first. He was confused because he had kept the door open for them all this time. He motioned for the 3 guests to sit on the sofa, with a coffee table between it and 2 plump armchairs on the other side. He expected Crystal to sit in the other chair next to him, but she sat on the sofa next to Jim and Loney, forcing them to make room. Maybe someone would like something to drink. By the way, my name is Biff. Of course, Crystal answered. To her, the name of the romantic schemer, who turned out to be Biff, was one of the few ways this situation could get worse. She thought that Heathcliff was also terrible, but the story was a success. Loney grimaced. Now Jim understood why she avoided his name. Who wants a passionate, marriage-ruining affair with Biff? How to explain this to your grandchildren? Jim noticed that Biff wasn't taking his eyes off Loney. My father was something of a fan of astronautics, but he was mistaken. There was Buzz, Dick, Wally, Rusty, and Goose, but there wasn't really an astronaut named Biff. His voice trailed off. He paused before adding, Father was very upset when he realized this. Three pairs of eyes stared at him. Biff stood up awkwardly, saying that he would bring water for everyone. Crystal started counting how many times Biff could demote his position. If he was good at nothing else, he was outstanding at this. Jim noticed that all the walls were covered with photographs of NASA or Star Trek. His brows furrowed. Baby, Loney tried to stand up, but tripped while trying to kneel at Jim's feet. In a half squat on the floor, as if she was trying to sit on the sofa and missed, she reached out for his hand. She didn't know what to do if Jim wouldn't let her touch him. She thanked heaven when he agreed. She pulled him closer, nodding. Baby, Loney apologized. It looks like there was a connection of some kind. Based on our phone conversation this morning, our friend Biff was also pretty drunk that night. But at least he remembers what happened. I was going to ask him everything, but then you called me about meeting me at the airport, and I decided to wait so we could find out the details together. I asked him if pharmaceuticals were involved. He said he didn't know, but there was a group of men who appeared to be interacting with groups of women who then quickly got drunk. I find it hard to believe that men would accidentally drug an entire room with women instead of choosing their targets. So I guess I was just drunk. I'm so sorry, Jim. This is another failure on my list. I wanted partial justification for being drugged, but now I honestly believe that I was not drugged. Biff doesn't seem to feel guilty about this either. How can this not be a complete justification? Jim knew that guilt did terrible things to the mind. He wished his wife had found something to alleviate her guilt. Biff looked at Jim very cautiously, then with some anger. Jim noticed this and shook his head as Biff put out some water and sat down. Jim also noticed that Biff looked at Loney with feelings close to adoration. Jim decided to calm him down because Biff had all the data. I just want to say that I'm not planning anything bad. I'm here to support my wife. Jim heard Loney sob at that. I need to know the details, but only up to a certain point. I don't want to humiliate anyone. Even if it's your fault and the details are unpleasant, I need to know, so please don't hold back. I need to know what treatment my wife needs to recover. Biff was shaking. Was it fear of Jim, or was he just in love with Loney? For a second, he just looked confused. I usually don't discuss my personal life. This is not something I stand by, it just happened that way, and there is nothing much to discuss. In a strange way, this made all three listeners feel both better and worse. Crystal kept looking back and forth between Biff and Loney, as if saying to Loney, seriously, couldn't you find someone better to cheat on? Loney understood her message and wanted to hit her. Biff gathered his courage, or the most reasonable semblance he could, and began. Okay, I was at the hotel bar that night. Wait, Crystal interrupted him. She hurried to the kitchen. They heard her fumbling with a plastic bag before she returned with a trash can from Biff's kitchen and a new bag. She placed it in front of Loney and nodded decisively. This gesture clearly said, just in case and good luck. Biff looked irritated, although resigned to this attitude. He stared at Loney again, even as she stared sadly into the yawning abyss of the trash can. The poor little man was shaking and constantly rubbing his hands as he began his story. Why, you all must understand, this was the most amazing event in my life. Yes, Loney left the next morning, but I thought I would have a wonderful memory to last a lifetime. Biff looked at the ceiling, saying, I had to understand that it was too good to be true. I thought you were my Maid of the Mist. That tourist boat at Niagara Falls? Loney asked in surprise. His face froze. No, the woman who came and gave King Arthur a sword and then disappeared. Jim suggested. You mean Lady of the Lake? Everyone looked at Jim for a moment. I had a classical education, he answered their unspoken question. Oh, hell, Biff said despondently. This will lose me points at the D&D table. He was lost in his own world for a second before speaking again. I thought you loved me because you left your underwear. Loney quickly blurted out. I couldn't find him. Her face turned red. She couldn't look at Jim. Biff laughed. I'm sure she couldn't, considering where I found him. Loney couldn't bring herself to ask where exactly. She couldn't even look at Jim's side. If she did, she would see her husband's face scrunch up as if he had bitten into an old cucumber hidden in the middle of his ice cream. Crystal, however, was more interested than ever. Mesmerized, Crystal moved to the edge of her seat. All she needed was popcorn. Crystal looked carefully at her husband and then at her wife. Jim began to follow Loney. Biff had been looking at her with adoration since they sat down. She felt their gaze on her, as if she had accidentally sat on an anthill. Biff looked at her shyly. I mean, you'll probably be my dream girl for the rest of my life. It just so happened that you all showed up, and for you this is a disgusting tragedy. I was drunk too. This is a standard state for me. Life is what you make it, but look at me, every day is a struggle. Every day is an upward climb. Loney wanted to puke at his words about the girl of her dreams. However, the rest of Biff's comments almost brought her to tears. I'm a technician. I hope my terms are not offensive. Some people don't like scientifically based vocabulary based on precise standards. They find it humiliating. I'm not going to do that. Loney moved the trash can closer. Jim hoped he didn't roll his eyes. Moving from concern to euphoria, Biff hastened to add, "Let me say, Loney, it was wonderful to know your name when you called this morning." "Loney, that's a beautiful name." The technician looked like he was ready to sing. Loney's stomach began to growl. Crystal, who was sitting next to her, leaned over to get a better look at her face. "Please keep it short and to the point, that's all I ask," Jim said quietly, looking at Biff. He seemed angry. 3 pairs of eyebrows furrowed at his reaction. Did he really think that the only thing standing between him and Loney was Jim's existence? Biff stared at Loney, enthusiastically remembering. She, Loney, danced a lot. She's beautiful. I watched her as I was next to her desk. It wasn't an accident, but I didn't expect what happened next. I just wanted to look at Loney. It was, like looking at a work of art. Out of the corner of her eye, Loney saw Crystal's head pop up from behind Jim to stare at her again. Loney tried to ignore it, pursing her lips. She noticed that she was making some kind of quiet hum. Biff continued. "Then Loney." Biff sighed. It got bad. From his strange expression, one might think that he was describing a dream that had come true. All the other ladies returned to the dance floor, but Loney needed help. So I helped her get to the toilet. When she came out, she no longer smelled like vomit, and she frowned, looking at her table. I asked if she wanted to go back to the bar, and she shook her head no, saying she wanted to go back to her room. So I started walking her back. Biff was as proud of himself as if he had landed a crowded plane whose pilots were incapacitated. In hotels now, all the rooms have cards, so I couldn't find out her number, and she didn't know it, so we went to my place. "Wow, I couldn't remember my own number," Crystal said in surprise. Both Loney and Jim thought that she was trying to help Loney in some twisted and doomed way. It didn't work. Jim asked her quietly, "You were in the same room. Do you remember her number?" Crystal's lips took on a sour expression. Loney would have gladly kissed Jim for his protection if she hadn't been afraid of throwing up on him. "It wasn't just lust on my part," said Biff. Loney still looked like she might feel sick. I couldn't help her much if she puked in the hallway. When we got to my room, I even left the door to the hallway open so that no one would think that I had taken advantage of her position. I was hoping someone who knew her would pass by. His head bobbed on his neck, betraying his final statement. Apparently, he wanted her to stay while he pretended to give her a chance to leave. Biff cleared his throat, clearing his memories. Well, Loney felt a lot better sitting on the couch, and she liked me. She treated me very nicely and thanked me for my help. We were on the couch, and she snuggled up to me. She said I reminded her of her husband. Crystal and Jim cast accusing glances at Loney, who looked flabbergasted. Biff's voice trembled, hoping Jim wouldn't blame him for not defending the sanctity of Loney's marriage after she mentioned she was married. So Loney wasn't going to sleep, and her tone was quite romantic. Crystal's eyes opened wide as Loney closed her eyes tightly. The question took everyone by surprise. Was the door to the corridor still open? Jim asked this calmly, although he clearly expected an answer. He also believed that the meaning of the answer would be clear to everyone involved, with the possible exception of Crystal. Biff tried his best to answer calmly. If he was wearing a tie, he would tug at his collar. Well, the door was open, before Loney's romantic gesture. What gesture? Jim's calm and flat voice came again, cutting through the silence. Biff looked at the ceiling like a man at the bottom of a pool, looking at the surface of the water. Loney, went to the bathroom, and I think this time she finally threw up. But when she came out, she was naked, and, she came over to my couch. I decided that it was her decision to stay, and I couldn't let passers-by see her like that, so I stood up and closed the door. Biff fell silent, but his face began to glow with happiness. When I returned to the sofa, she snuggled up to me, hugged me, and purred. Biff's entire audience looked incredulous. Absorbed in his memories, Biff did not notice. I tried to kiss her, and she answered. I was shocked. As the song says, I may be dead, but I'm not a fool. Loney grabbed the trash can in front of her. Crystal looked like she could fight Loney for him. Both women were deathly afraid to look at Jim. Biff admitted. This is awkward. Loney led. She, showed me what to do. I, had a great time. Loney and Crystal looked stunned at the same time. Biff perked up, looking at Loney with admiration, sighing again. Then she showed me how to dance vertically. It was one of my first dances with a lady, and naked at that. We were hot, sweaty, and blissfully naked. We danced, we swayed. She must have liked it too, because she dragged me back to bed after that. Realizing that Jim did not put his hands around his throat, Biff continued, I learned a lot. Biff looked up, shrugging. Sorry. Crystal looked at Loney, whose knuckles were white from holding tightly to the edge of the trash can. She also appeared to have burst a blood vessel in one of her eyes, which began to twitch rapidly. Biff now said in a distant voice, I tried to make love to her, but it didn't work out very well. Biff stopped short of asking Jim if Loney often acted like this. So in the end, she, just gave me pleasure after that. Biff realized that he was not dead yet, so he quickly added, without hiding the pride in his voice, just like before we danced. She did it to me twice. Wow, Crystal exclaimed as she watched Jim's reaction as he watched his wife vomit into the trash can again. I didn't leave her alone. I'm a gentleman. Biff was so happy. Biff was so full of joy that he didn't notice Loney throwing up again. Biff continued. And finally, she lay on her back and said, okay, for the next stage. The three froze in anticipation. And then we fell asleep sweetly. I was so happy. And then, he beamed, lost in memories. Loney said that everything was fine and even wanted. The three stopped breathing, to sleep in my arms. She hugged me tightly as she fell asleep. Biff turned away, trying to cope with the surging emotions. The listeners, as if in unison, breathed a sigh of relief. Incredibly, the three even felt pity for him. His life was a complete misery. All four would agree with this. Biff interrupted his thoughts by suggesting, I heard they were talking about STDs. I don't think I have any illnesses. He looked intently at the floor. I haven't been with anyone for a long time. He blushed with shame at his accidental confession. Trying to correct the situation, he added, well, for quite some time now. He tried to save face. Nobody believed him. Crystal said loudly, oh my God, Loney, you took Biff's virginity. Still, Jim was relieved that he wouldn't have to worry about STDs or possible pregnancy. It was a Pyrrhic victory if there ever were such a thing. Loney was happy for Jim and their relationship, but not so much for herself. She felt that there was a terrible truth here, and she could not ignore it. She addressed Jim as if the others were not present. But damn it, Jim. For some reason, it made Biff happy. Loney tried to ignore his reaction, her mind already in turmoil. But Jim, don't you see? Your seemingly adoring wife apparently enjoyed herself time after time, providing treats as free souvenirs at the exhibition. Everyone heard Crystal hit her forehead and signaled to stop behind Jim, who turned to Loney. Besides, even the suffocating one himself admitted that Loney did not allow him to sleep with her. Nevertheless, Loney continued, I was not offended or harassed. I was a voluntary participant and an active member of the team, apparently in the role of chief cheerleader. It was wrong, and I knew it, just didn't know. At that moment, that is. True, I didn't know. Please believe me. Jim nodded wearily. That's the whole point, dear. Being with another man was wrong anyway. But some steps are more important than others. Moving on was wrong, your mind knew it, your heart knew it, but they were passed out in a drunken stupor. But your inner feelings still knew, and they constantly told you about it. Now that you know everything and how far it went and how far it didn't go, your guilt and inner feelings will probably become easier. Jim felt his mouth twist to one side before he said, I'm generally impressed with your precautions. All the major and minor systems that were supposed to stop you were disabled. But somehow there remained a mechanism that prevented you from completely betraying me. Like the second inner eyelid of Vulcans, Biff suggested. The pair looked at him for a second, then turned their attention back to each other. Jim told his wife, Darling, your body told you it felt good, and why not do it? But somewhere inside, there was something that prevented you from committing the worst betrayal. I'm not sure you deserve the full punishment for adultery. Loney didn't look convinced. Jim realized how ridiculous this was. He had to convince her not to feel too guilty about spending the night pleasuring herself with another man. Yes, you did, but there is something that softens it. Loney couldn't look at Jim. He tried to explain to her. Drinking with friends is your fault. You are completely to blame. Yes, your friends controlled how much you drank, but to feel the limit was on you. Jim had another thought. Crystal, you girls didn't put anything in Loney's drinks, did you? Crystal began to shake her head in denial, but before she could respond, Loney interrupted her, looking at Jim pleadingly. Something prevented her from assuaging her guilt. You heard what I did. I drank a lot. So what if they kept bringing the glass to my lips? She ignored him and grabbed her husband's shirt, pleading with him. But, darling, obviously I wanted it. I tried my best for this. I am a non-entity. Damn it, Loney, that's enough. But they call me stupid, Crystal said in disbelief. Jim extended his hand to his wife and tried to pull her to him. Loney was upset when he touched her. Don't get dirty because of me, dear. Crystal, trying to soften Loney's refusal, whispered in Jim's ear. Don't discount the infection. Be mindful of germs. He frowned at the situation. Sometimes someone just has to take command. Jim resolutely hugged his wife, pulling her towards him. She relaxed and burst into tears. Jim could now hear Crystal crying behind him. He dared to turn his head to look at her. There was a happy, albeit broken, smile on her face. Crystal explained her emotional outburst, pronouncing it all as one long German word. Oh my God, you really are the perfect husband. Loney talks about this all the time. It seemed like she cheated on you. Well, she actually went to bed and gave pleasure to the guy, which should be something important. And what did you do when confronted with her supposed guilt? You jumped on a plane and flew to Hoboken. Hoboken, and what's even better is that you gave her the benefit of the doubt that she didn't give herself. You took her side even when she didn't. And now she was found half innocent, but also half guilty, and you forgive her and still love her and are going to help her heal, Jim answered with quiet confidence. The benefit of the doubt is what marriage should be, and forgiveness is love. Damn henpecked man, if you ask me, said the stifled man as if nothing had happened. 2 teeth hit the floor before his body did. Crystal was now even more impressed. Wow, that was great, Jim. You just knocked him out. Your whole family is probably like this. She looked at the lifeless body on the floor. I think he won't forget how any of you did it. It was spectacular, Jim. Crystal was still commenting happily as she watched Loney and Jim walk out the door with their arms around each other, get into their rental car, and head to the airport. She closed the door and said to the unconscious man on the floor, Wasn't that wonderful? A full minute passed before Crystal thought, They were my traveling companions. I'm stuck in Hoboken with Mr. Germ. Her thoughts began to spin like a spinning roulette wheel, stopping in a strange place. She thought, I haven't had good fun in a long time. Her head dropped, her eyes closed, self-loathing began to grow. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.